Today is really just going to be focused on lighting and some of the details to know about lighting. We'll walk through the things you want to do when you're looking for your lights that you're looking to buy for your grow, and this is kind of in preparation for our next week's webinar, which is going a little bit more in depth into a strategy that we have recently been working and finding being more effective. The last week or the last two webinars that we've done was one on the business plan, which is important for um, having your business together, being able to use that in multiple ways for your own benefit, but then also to submit and offer up to potential investors to gain their interest. And then last webinar we talked about the funding your deal and how the finance works between both private lenders and institutional lenders. And even with knowing how that all works, the market changes and the market appetite for investment changes, and you need to have multiple strategies to be able to address it. So when the funds are readily available and it's easy to raise them, that's great. You want to know how to take action and make it happen quickly. But if you have a harder time finding those funds, or if the dollar amounts that people are willing to offer up for startups is a little bit lower, you also need to have the strategies for that. And that's sort of the scenario that we're seeing more often. And so I'm going to go over next Wednesday, the strategy that we have put together, and I'm already actually working with students and have worked with them to implement this to some good effect. And we'll break it down in a little bit more detail. And one of those key pieces in the efficiency or the economical approach of putting together your startup costs for build out, or just for expanding your grow operation, is going to be the lights. That's one of the most high dollar point items that you're going to purchase, especially if you're doing it on a tight budget, etc. The lights are something you don't want to skimp on. You want to get the most value for your money, but you want to have high quality lights, because that is what is going to directly transfer the energy into the plant, and the plant then converts that into the ultimate product, the terpenes, the cannabinoids, etc. So that's really the purpose of this webinar, is to understand that part really solid, so that when we go and talk about finding the best cost-effective use for your funds, when you get to the biggest cost, you can know what the true value of those lights are. Do you need the biggest, most powerful light? Or is there a more efficient way to get the same results? And so we'll look at the actual light, the actual piece of equipment, and the different parts that you want to focus on. We're going to look through a couple different examples. I pulled up online the product description and specifications, and how you go through that part of it to really compare and contrast one brand versus the other. And then how to take a look at it on a daily light integral, a DLI chart, viewing the PPFD, the photons, the photons per second, the intensity of the light that it can produce at different phases, and what kind of intensity you need throughout the course of the grow. And so just to foreshadow that part, in the early part of veg, the intensity of the light at the canopy level, which you can monitor with a PAR meter. A PAR meter would be a key piece of equipment that you should have in your grow, because that's going to allow you to be the most efficient with your power consumption, and using in concert with your lights. So you would put the PAR meter at the canopy level, right at the where the leaves are, and you want to know how intense that is. And so for the early veg stage, you should be between 300 and 600 ppfd. Okay. And then later in veg, you can raise that to 600 to 800 ppfd. And then when you flip to flower, that's where you can start cranking it up to 1,000 plus ppfd. And so when we get into that part, I want you to have that sort of as the background information, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the first thing is learning about the lights, the different parts of it. And so here is what you need to know. All right, I've got windows opened up all over my screen. Okay, so the LEDs are, in my opinion, if you have choice between LEDs and high pressure sodium lights, or any kind of CFL lights, LEDs, in my opinion, for several functional reasons, are the superior type of light that you want to ultimately get. If you go into an existing grow and they have all high pressure sodium light bulbs, that's fine. They work well. They have a decent spectrum, so different types of wavelengths, and you can get the plants to grow and have good results. But it's not the most efficient. So LEDs have a higher efficiency, so generally a lower cost and less heat generated. And I put in kind of, because there's still heat being generated, but as we'll see when I show you some pictures of the different lights, whereas the sodium light bulbs radiate their heat down towards the plant, which causes the biggest concern for overheating and burning your plant. The LEDs, the light portion, the diodes, actually generate very little light comparatively, and they have a heat sink that is on the back of the light. So they still generate the heat, but they generate the heat away from the plant source, and that's really what they're talking about, the less heat generated. When you convert electricity to light and turn that into photons, you're going to have a dissipation of heat. So overall heat is actually very similar, but in which direction that heat radiates. In LEDs, it goes straight up out of the back of the light, and so it doesn't affect the vapor pressure density nearly as much as a sodium light bulb, for example. The LEDs have full spectrum, and we'll take a look in the light specifications. And that full spectrum goes all the way from far red to far blue into the ultraviolet. The plant is able to absorb that light in all of those spectrums and convert that into plant matter and convert that into ultimately the terpenes and cannabinoids that we're attempting to harvest. Okay, so more energy available to the plant with a full spectrum light. So that is important when you're looking at LEDs and lights in general. Light intensity control. Most of the newer LED lights have dimmers and or multiple settings. And so for the efficiency of the energy consumption, like I said, in early veg, it's going to be much less intense light. Late veg, you'll crank it up a little bit. And then in flower, all the way through the end of the flower phase, you can be increasing that light intensity to maximize the amount of energy that the plant has to create more plant and more flower, more terpenes, cannabinoids. Also, they are generally lightweight and so easy to move around, easy to adjust the heights, and that on a very functional level when you're setting up your grow is important. Instead of needing a whole team to put up a large number, one person is able to handle an LED light, whereas a larger setup is a little bit more complicated with some of the heavier types of lights. Most HPSs are a single light bulb setup because they are a lot heavier and you're not able to move in larger groups as easily. And then LED is an emerging tech, and they have been increasing its capabilities and the benefits to it significantly in the last 3 years for sure, compared to the last 10 years ago. The LEDs have massively improved, and that technology wave, you want to be able to ride that and stay at the top of competition as a result. With several of the things that I already mentioned. So just in the chat, if you caught all of that, type in LED. And that is ultimately where we want to go with the lights. Even if you have the HPSs in the facility, it's fine to use them. But as soon as you start bringing in income, you want to start phasing into LEDs. Okay. All right, so you're going to have a couple different types of LED lights. You have bar lights over on the left-hand side, and these bar lights, they have sort of tight groupings of the diodes, which you can see easier on the center picture. Those little yellow spots, those are the diodes. That's the lithium that lights up and makes the light. So that's the light generation, and they pack it real tight. And in there, you can have both the white light, the full spectrum, and then the specifically far red and blue lights that if they have that full expanded spectrum. Now the black plate, and you can see the ridges on the back of it, that is the heat sink. So with all those diodes tightly packed, they need a place for the heat to go, and so that is usually an aluminum plate that acts as a heat sink and draws the heat away and up through the back, essentially, of the light. So it's able to dissipate upwards and not affect the plant. That allows you to drop the light closer, oftentimes up to 18 inches away from the plant without causing any burn issues. Then you have the bar light, and this is a long strip of light, and this is used and able to spread the LED light out to be a larger footprint so that you can cover more square footage on the ground, right? If you have one light that has a 5 by 5 footprint, that's 25 square feet, um, versus a light that is broader and it has a 7 by 7 footprint, that's 49 square feet. That's a big difference, the amount of lights that you need to cover the actual plants. After you figure the footprint and the coverage to know how many lights you need in a specific area, then you look at the light intensity. If the one with the smaller footprint has a much higher light intensity, and the one with the larger footprint has low intensity to the point that would actually reduce your overall output, then you might go with the smaller footprint. But if it's apples to apples and they're able to produce the same intensity, then getting the one with the larger footprint means that you have less lights that you need to buy. And so you compare those prices accordingly. And so if you take the prices and break it down, previous, go to the previous one. There we go. And you break it out by dollars per square foot for your lights. That gives you a really good comparison as long as the light intensity is the same. And so that's why you might see the bar lights. And Gavita has some pretty classic bar light setups. And then you have the Cobb light, and the Cobb light, is a very centralized light that uses a lens to disperse the light intensity and the light photons. And so the Cobb lights are another way to use it, and they usually are set up in a more compact light structure, but because of the optics, they're able to spread that out to a large footprint or comparably large footprint, and that can help out sometimes if you have restrictions on the amount of ceiling space or head space that you need to get around your plants. So those are things to take in consideration with the three basic types of LEDs. Okay, Chaz, I see you just popped in. We're going over the lights and the things that you want to look for in the lights when you're building out. You and I talked about going about the efficient model of building, having a startup cost. And reducing those startup costs, and it's the lights that are going to be what we want to make sure we get the most value out of. We don't want to skimp on those, and so this webinar is focused on being able to analyze those lights as best possible. And so, just to review, we've got the bar lights, the board lights, I should say, the bar lights, and the Cobb lights are the three different types. Okay. All right, next. Now we have the diodes, and this is where you can get into the nitty-gritties of the specifications, and you can actually find out where the diodes are manufactured, okay, and the quality of those diodes. You have the full spectrum diodes, which are the white light. They're the majority of the LEDs. Then you have the red, which in the middle one you can see a distinct line of red diodes, and that disperses just fine. So you're going to have more full spectrum than far red. And then you have blue light, which kind of comes off as purple. Okay, and so with the full spectrum plus the far red light diodes and the blue diodes, that's going to give you from the far red, which is wavelength of I believe 740 nanometers, all the way up to ultraviolet light. And so that's what you're looking for the most effective and largest spectrum for your plant to get. Now with the diodes, it does matter where they're manufactured, because this is the functional tech part of the light. as I have read on plenty of reviews and from my own personal experience, lights that you get from, say overseas, you get it shipped in from China, the quality of that light is oftentimes questionable. And if you have parts of the light that go bad, the diodes is one of those pieces, that you might have some diodes go out and die on you. That's that means your light's not producing at its max capacity. Using a par meter, like I had mentioned before, using that par meter at the canopy, it's going to tell you what the actual light intensity is. So even if one or two of the nodes die for whatever reason, you might still be achieving 1300 ppfd photon intensity, which is plenty, as we will see, to get into high production for your plant and really push the boundaries. But if you have a light that's not producing at a significant level, then you need to change that light out, and we want we would want the light to last as long as possible. The question was, we would need par meter for each light. No, one par meter. It's a tool that you can carry around with you. It's like a thermometer, but it has a light sensor on it. And so you put the light sensor at canopy level, and you walk around and check. I usually over each plant, and make sure that intensity is relatively the same. And there are some LED like product specs that will show you the distribution of the light intensity. So at the very middle of the light, you might have a light intensity of 1800, and at the very edge of the light, you'd have a light intensity of 400 or 500. And I'll show you, see if I have a good visual description of that. But at the edge of your light, it becomes less and less intense. And so if you have two lights, how far apart do you put them? Right? That's a great question. Well, at the center, we're at 1800. And at the edges, we're at, say, 500. Well, if you have those edges overlapping by a little bit, then that space doesn't have to be low production space. That intensity would double from 500 plus 500. Now that overlap space is going to have 1,000, and so you can judge how close you need those lights together at the different heights to be able to maintain an optimum light exposure. I hope that's a decent answer without getting too wordy on that. And so that's the diodes. That's how they function. That's the important part of the light. And then this next slide, I believe, yes, is the second, or also the one of the two most important parts of this light, and that is the grow light driver. This is sort of the electronics of the light, the control aspect of the light fixture. And so you can look into where this part of the light is manufactured as well. Like I said before, I prefer light companies that source this type of electronic components from the United States, or from like a reputable electronics company. Samsung does a lot of good work. They have good products. And so if you check in on that, but if it's an unknown or it's sourced out of places that are known for making sketchy products, then I would say that's a lower quality of light, and you want to make sure you're not overpaying for something like that. If you have something comparable and has a better diode and light driver company that they come from. Okay, so if if you understand all that stuff up to this part, just type in parts in the chat, and we'll keep moving. But I want you to understand that you can look into both of those parts, and that would be good use of your time. Okay. Okay, now there are control systems for the lighting that are definitely good, and you want to be able to have that in, tie that into your system. If you're going on really low budget, then these are still uh, quite reasonable in value, or good value for what you put into them. So you have the that Titan controls Helios 11. That is a good power management system, and you want to make sure that you're plugging your lights into circuit, or power strips with fuses, so that you don't lose lights from charges, or electrical, um, what do you call them? Surges, electrical surges, when you're tapped into a grid. And then also the phone app, Pulse is just one brand, but sometimes they actually have the par meters that you can set in place at canopy level, and you can monitor the timing of your lights, and make sure that, and have that available on your phone. And so all of those are sort of working with those lights, the powerhouses literally of your grow, and making sure that it's well managed, that it is well protected. Okay. This is the par meter. This is what it looks like. And so that blue dot, or sensor, is what you would put at the canopy level, and it's connected back to the calculator looking jig. And Apogee Labs, Apogee Instruments, is actually on YouTube. Dr. Big Bugbee does a lot of good YouTube videos about focusing around light, and several of those episodes are specifically about the light and the effects of light on cannabis. And I would highly recommend that as educational viewing, going to Apogee Labs on YouTube. And they explain par meters and the different ways that you can use them, the effects of red light and blue light on the actual growth of your plant. So you can, one of the reasons that having far red light, a full spectrum, and blue light is that red light has been shown to increase the actual productivity, the growth of the plant, and then blue light can be used to actually influence the height of the plant. And they talk about that in depth. And I learned that, actually the first time I learned the details of that was from some of the research that they've done in the last 2 years at Apogee Labs that Dr. Bugbee was in charge of. So that's just a little bit of extra knowledge that you could put in your back pocket to understand how to effectively manipulate the plant to have the outcomes that you desire, especially if you're growing, say, a sativa strain in a tent environment. Sativa, if you've got a big enough pot and you're growing that thing during that stretch phase, 6.5 feet might not be enough. With the light dropping down to probably 5.5 feet, that plant will outgrow your space. And so working in the controls that you get, or the encouraging the growth in the direction that you want without losing productivity, because that just causes it to grow shorter and stockier, and builds the plant out in more of a bushy fashion. So that's the par meter, big tool when you're looking at the light intensity coming out of the LED lights. Erica, I see you popped in, and so LED lights, the preferred lights that we've been talking about. And if you've missed any of the webinar, I am recording this, and we will be sending out a link. I'm going to be posting this on a private YouTube and posting these videos. So if you've missed anything, don't worry about it. I'll make that available. Um, okay. And that is it for that part of the slideshow. But now what I want to do, I'm gonna share a different screen with you guys. This is, let's share that one. This is the daily light integral chart, and I've had to magnify this chart a lot from its original form, so I think the numbers are a little bit blurry. Yeah, definitely. I'll have all those last webinars available. I just got the go ahead to put everything on YouTube, and so I'm going to set that up. I run another YouTube channel, so it'll be very simple for me. So this is the daily light integral chart, and this is a chart that you should have, your grower should have at your grow all the time. You see it pretty much any grow that I've walked into, they have this because it is kind of a roadmap to the light intensity and how to use your lights for maximum output. And so over on the left-hand side, you have numbers from 0 all the way up to 1450. That is your light intensity. And so I think my screen is cutting it off a little bit. It says PPFD, and this is the number. And so if we actually go back and look at the par meter, let me show that. If we go back to the par meter, it says 209. Okay, so it's reading 209. That's 209 ppfd. And on this these DLI chart over here, that means, can you see the mouse cursor? If you can see it, just type in yeah. Otherwise, I'll describe it with my words. But over on the left, you would be between the 200. Okay, you'd be between the 200, right about the 200 mark, and so you would bring it over to the number of hours of day, the daily light integral. How many hours of the day your plant is being exposed to light? And so if we're over here and having 20 to 24 hours of light during our veg stage, your 200 ppfd is down in the yellow. So that's not optimum. That's not optimum levels. We want to be up in the green and potentially in the orange. So green is with regular air, just ambient air, okay? With light intensity, this level, this 35, 34, this is kind of the range that you're trying to hit. So to start out with, at 24 hours of light, your optimum is going to be between 300 and 600 ppfd, if you look at this. Now, as you go into late veg, you're going to be dialing down the number of hours of light, but you're going to be increasing the intensity. And so you would be increasing your intensity, like I said, up to the 600 to 800 range during the veg period. And that would keep you at the top of this peak performance. And then in flower, when you flip to 12 hours lights on, 12 hours lights off. We go up here, and peak efficiency is somewhere between 900 and 1,100. All right. And so 1,100 is where you're going to max out, and this top of the chart where it starts going orange, that shows sort of the threshold when carbon dioxide becomes the limiting factor. And so if you don't have a CO2 injection in your system, this is going to be the maximum that you are going to be able to push the plant. So 1,100 ppfd is going to be the max intensity that is going to have additional growth as a result, because the what am I saying? The carbon dioxide is the limiting factor, and then if we want to put the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and crank that up, then we can break into this higher level, which then we would be utilizing 1,450 ppfd, which the intensity of the light then comes in. And so I'm just going to go and show you, where is this? Whiteboard, where are we? Oh, I gotta pull up my website. Okay, I'm gonna show you the lights. Here we go. Come on, share it with them. Nope. There it is. Share this one. Okay. So this is the optic light, and we have dimmable. It's 550 watts, 120 degree lenses. These are the Cobb style, optic 8. Okay. And then you go down and you look, it's got a full spectrum. It shows you the different wavelengths and the intensities. And that's what you want to see. Full spectrum, far red, far blues. And then you can go down some additional parameters. So we know that it's got warranties. So warranties will be important because these are actually bigger purchases. You also have lifetime hours. That's good to know, especially if you're buying used equipment. And the max power, the wattage, and you can figure out the energy consumption, and then you can start comparing those. You have, let's see, does this one show the footprint? So I'm looking for the footprint. It shows dimensions, but it is a 3-way dimmable. So this one actually has a early veg, late veg, and flower settings that it can switch to, and so you can utilize the energy more efficiently going from one to the other. Okay, so that's optic 8. That's a good brand, a good quality product. You have Gavita, and this is kind of their classic style. Also, very good brand, quality. Now their 1700 Pro can do a 1700 ppfd. So that's way up in that chart, which is a little bit excessive coming right out of the light, but you want to see what the intensity is at the canopy level. And so we go down to some of their other specifications. Let's see here. Okay, this is given quite a little bit, but here, so we get to the voltage, the amount of watts. It's coverage 6x6 for veg, or 6x6 or 7x7 for veg, and then bloom about a 5x5 square foot. So depending on how you have your lighting set up, that's what you're looking at as far as how much foot cover area it covers, and you can then compare that with the footprint of the other ones, and then voltage and amperage efficiency here. Okay. And then Highgrove is another one that is a very high quality product. So the Magnolia 6, this is 6 boards. Okay. And then you would come back down and look at the PPFD. So 13,000 or 1,375. That's kind of at the top of our chart at over on the VPD chart or the DLI chart. Excuse me. And but this one is $1,000, and coverage is 25 square feet at about 36 inches, 18 to 36 inches. Okay. So these are the pieces of information that you want to know about and understand to be able to compare one light versus the other. Okay. And so those are all the big things that I want you to know. Oh, and this actually shows the light intensity distribution from the center of the light all the way out to the edges. So the edges of this one are between 650 and 570, but right in the middle of that light, the intensity is at 900 ppfd at 36 inches. Okay. And so that is how you, those are the things you want to look at and compare. So do I buy Gavita? Do I buy Highgrove? Do I buy Optix 8? That's how you compare them as far as what they can do for your output, what the value is, and then the answer is going to depend on what type of setup you have for a grow. And what aspects are more important for you. Okay. That's all I got for you for today, guys. The next webinar is going to be about some details on how you get into these grows at really efficiently and at lower buildup cost, and how using this information from the lights rolls right into it, because the lights are the biggest piece of that. Okay. So if you could just give me an okay, you've heard all the information. Unless you have any specific questions, thank you very much, Sean. And then we will see you next week, and I'll talk to you the next time that we have a phone call. All right, everybody have a great night.